Good afternoon from Nairobi and welcome to Africa Speaks this Monday, the 6th of November 2023. I hope you're enjoying your day. My name is Purity Museanzuki. We begin right here in Nairobi where the National Dialogue Committee is today having a round table engaging the Ministry of Energy and that of Treasury and as well as the State Department for Housing. We now cross over live at the Bomas of Kenya and listening.
But probably we should have asked her to resign. Because if you are allowing withdrawals through what is now being revealed to the committee and called budgeted corruption, then it means either you are incompetent or you are part and parcel of those that are stealing from us.
Order. Yeah, under order. Honorable Chairs, there's a statement which is circulating attributed to the CS for National Treasury. Today is a statement in response to the allegations by the controller of budget. I just wanted to answer Professor Ndungu, perhaps address the issue in your statement, because it just come before us now, on page 2, where you claim that for financial year 2022-2023, approved budget for personal allowances for the office of the controller of budget was Kenya shilling 7.3 million, which was reduced to Kenya shilling 700,000 in the supplementary budget. Yet actual expenditure was only Kenya shilling 50,000. And now come this financial year, you still go ahead to budget for Kenya shilling 7.5 million. What would have informed this budgeting if the previous financial year, the only expenditure was 50,000 shillings? Down from a budget of 7.3 million. Is this what Nyakam was talking about? Finally, thanks.
Yeah, and I think I will answer that, Your Excellency, because I think we are looking at personal allowances and salaries differently. Yes. So I have itemized that. Yeah.
Yet, Prof, before you answer, I want us to lift the work of this committee beyond incriminating other people, because we may not have the ability, unless we call them for come and respond. I think there's a principle in law which says at some stage, let the laws lie where it belongs or where it is. I would therefore, I know that Aaron feels very strongly about this, but I think we need to be able to moderate even ourselves, because there will be things which may be unpalatable. We've heard of new and old state capture. We have heard all those things, and without even bringing names. So I personally think that we should avoid a situation where we reduce this session into discussion of a control of budget. Thank you.
But, Mr. Chairman, I think Aaron was alluding to a statement where he was not there present, but it's just giving a comment on the same. This is the same control of budget who said she was sent SMSs to withdraw 7 billion shillings and kind of thing. Via WhatsApp. Via WhatsApp. So anyway, I think Bilo had requested to have the first bite so that he can leave. And since you are my budget and finance committee chair, Bilo,
I'll comment.
Please make a comment on that issue. Office of the Control of Budget, so that we are able to know whether what she is alleging is true, or we need to be a bit more prudent with our public officers.
Very well. Thank you very much, Chairman. I think was there earlier, I did actually talk about that and say the buck stops with the control of the budget, because no money can be withdrawn without express approval, as you read very clearly. So I think...
yet below, it's not a matter of withdrawal of monies.
But I'm coming to the second part, the one on the budget.
Because we should talk about personal emoluments.
The MP raised, I think it's very important.
Okay.
The challenge we have, Mr. Chairman, is Treasury is required to use zero-based budgeting. Then they would look at what did this person spend last year? 50,000? Yes, 50,000. But when you go by incremental system, how much was the budget office last year? The budget figure in the estimates was 7.5. They just start from 7.5 and add something. So this is part of the challenges we have. But it's very clear that notwithstanding whatever has been budgeted, Mr. Chairman, whether it's repeated, our salary is repeated 3 times or 4 times, no withdrawal can be done without approval from the controller of budget. I think that's very clear. So in other words, if that money is lost, if for whatever reason somebody used her name to withdraw money, then I think clearly our office would know and should be in a position to. So very close, very quickly, Chairman, the questions which were asked. On the hustler, let me start from not in any particular order, but very quickly. I think that the main challenge on the uptake of hustler, why it's not, in my view, as successful as Fuliza is because it did not meet the expectations for whatever reasons. I think people expected probably the amounts to be higher, or but the fact that the interest rates is only 8%, and Fuliza has much more, has a higher percentage, did not stop Kenyans from continuing with Fuliza. And now you'll see that in Fuliza the default rate is nil. With Hustler the default rate is 20%, and the uptake is low, and this is why Treasury, I think, probably was able to reduce it to 5 billion. So I think probably the expectations people had from government.
On a lighter note, I heard CS Ndungu say he's actually a member of Hustler Fund.
Well,
I think he does that as a minister responsible, maybe to monitor the uptake or whatever.
Yes,
but I think Mr. Professor Ndungu cannot be that kind of a hustler.
But it's important that we take note, underline what the CS Treasury said about market.
Yeah.
Let us incentivize the markets to do their work. If we really looked at what Fuliza is doing, and government looked at, start with Fuliza and probably looked at some of the challenges, they would not need to allocate money to do Fuliza's work. If government looked at incentivize the housing, the construction, the contractors, in terms of tax remissions, in terms of, granting bank facilities or lower, bank, so I think then you would not have needed Kenyans to be taxed, 1.5 plus 3% to fund housing. I think the market thing, when a CS Treasury, if it is important that you put your foot down on your colleagues, that let us not try and do everything as government, because that money will come from taxpayers and we don't have the money. On the IPP, Mr. Chairman, I only want to comment and say that there was a very good report in September last year on the independent power purchase agreement by the task force, the presidential task force. We need that one to be implemented. It will address all the challenges we have discussed here. Do we have the political will to implement that power purchase agreement task force report? It was very clear, and eminent Kenyans actually spend a lot of time coming up with what needs to be done to address that matter. On the dollar, I think what the CS, I would advise the CS Treasury to do is, even now under his watch, the challenge that the reason why Kenyans are keeping $8 billion in their commercial bank accounts, and they are not, selling it to the bank, is because of the existence of the dual exchange rate. It is there up to now. Let him do away with that. Why would central bank tell you that the exchange rate is 150? When you go and want to buy it, it's 156, 157. So I think if that is not there, nobody will keep that money. So the question of the shortage or the would disappear. The tax review, I have suggested, that there are actually taxes which are critical, and the most common ones are the levies. These levies are called levies, but in forms of taxes, and they are not being used for the purposes for which they were originally intended. This is why I said some of those levies need to be reviewed and need to be removed, really, and they're not adding value except making the cost of production higher. And the ones for fuel has been mentioned, for example. And the ones I have mentioned, things like the one for Agricultural Food Authority, the one RDL, Railway Development, which really it's not being used to service that loan, and so forth. So I think those are some of the taxes that, in my view, needs to be reviewed. Then on the market, the dollar, still on the dollar. I had the CSA, this thing was managed. But let me tell you, in any country, because of external shocks, to insulate the economy, the manufacturers and businessmen and everyone from sudden volatility, Any country you go in this world, central banks do intervene in the exchange rate to avoid that sudden volatility. It is normal. If, for example, the shilling today goes to 200, central bank cannot just sit and wait. Tomorrow, people who are doing businesses, everything, so there'll be chaos. You have to try and go to the market. And this is what I think has been happening in the past, and I think that can still happen. But what we are seeing is that there's need to really address that issue. My worry is that government of Kenya seems to depend on IMF. That IMF tells you your sharing is overvalued, and so we just go back and say, okay, and relax. But I think we need to look at the economy critically and to avoid that kind of thing. So, Chairman, 2 or 3 others I just want to mention very quickly. One, for the cost of living. For cost of living, I think, and I've said it very clearly in my report, we must review every policy and regulatory proposal in terms of its impact on the cost of living before cabinet and parliament approval is sought. I think this is important because you see every day, a department, a ministry, coming up with something. We're going to introduce this. We're going to charge this. We're going to change this. Every change of policy that has an impact on the cost of living should not be taken, to cabinet and parliament until it has been examined clearly in terms of its impact on the cost of living. I think this is important. There was a bill last year in 2021 before Parliament to amend the PFM, Public Finance Management Act, to give members of Parliament to require that all loans must get prior approval from Parliament before Treasury signs the dotted lines. I think that is critical, gentlemen and ladies. This is critical. Otherwise, we will continue getting Parliament as a rubber stamp, approving loans which have been signed in London, in Korea, in Japan, anywhere. I think it's something that law needs to be revisited. It's critical. Chairman, very quickly, the last two I want to mention is that, in my view, to address these challenges on the economy, because there is a disconnect between what Kenyans feel about the state of the economy and what needs to be done and what the government thinks. I think it's time we have a national convention on the status of the economy with the right stakeholders. You have to get, the people who are in business, you have to get the professional and business organizations and forums, you have to get the farmers, the industries, and so forth. Let us discuss really this issue about our economy, because there are challenges. Government does not engage adequately with business. That is the challenge. And so we can't just, as government, come up with rules and regulations and then businesses feel there sometimes. And there are sectors where people are engaged, but I think there are many, and there's benefit. It will give government an opportunity also to listen. Listen to the farmers. Listen to the industry, to investors, to SMEs. That is very important. Instead of just, a top-down approach. Lastly, I think I want to conclude by saying that the question of spending, as Dr. Rugo said, is critical. Unless we cut our clothes to our size, we will continue to be talking in these forums. And I think the argument by Treasury, and I had what the CS said, that we cannot just, which expenses will be cut. I think clearly what we know is that if you take a pen and paper and go through the printed estimates, really, you can, there are things which are not a priority. There are things which you can defer. Even needs can be deferred so that you don't get into a bigger crisis. I think it's important we review the question of spending so that we can keep this country in one piece. Otherwise, we will go over the precipice. This is my thoughts. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Honorable Bill Okero. Do we follow that order?
Yeah.
We follow that order. Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Abro.
Thank you, Co-Chairs. I was asked two questions. One, Bill has responded to a bit, but first I was asked, is it true that 80% of Kenyans, I want to also encourage the PS for housing to refer to national statistics. He referred to documents by other people out there. We have a national census 2019, which is what we use. This is what it says. There are 12.1 million households in this country. They are divided between rural and urban. rural are 7.4, urban are 4.7. 86%, that is 6.3 in rural, own their own homes. That's the figure I was referring to. Maybe just to clarify that. But then yes, 86, and if you had my comment, I was saying, what is the need in the rural areas for building houses? Because he said he has written to every member of parliament asking for land. I don't think even any MP owns land in the first place, public land, but that's a story for another day. And 21.3 in urban areas own their own homes. The rest rent. A good number rent. The question is, do they have a problem renting? Is there anything across the world? Most populations live in rented homes, rented houses. Of course, we have a challenge. Is the challenge actually that there are no houses or that people cannot afford mortgages? I think let's address the right challenge. And that's why I say I think there's still a lot to be discussed around the housing. I will not belabor that. What to do with, why say cut taxes on one side, and at the same time cut spending is indeed a contradictory. It is not. The reason for that is that the more we discuss this as purely a revenue problem, the more we get it wrong, in my opinion. Because we seem to say all our expenditures are right. I gave an example of the state-owned enterprises. If you go through the levies, a lot of those levies and rates are charged to maintain these state-owned enterprises because they have to get some money to keep them going, because that's basically what they established, and agencies. And in my opinion, I think that it will be of value to, first of all, remember those institutions, just to take us one step back, are also playing in this intergovernmental space where between counties and national government. Look at the number of them in the water sector. Look at the number of them, in the different frameworks, and we seem to be even creating more with the law. So there is a possibility to actually look at the efficiencies, and the Auditor General is on record, just flagging out expenditures that were not right. If you work on all those numbers, including the 2 billion that the current government has committed to confirm, whether it's true that, as per the former president, that we lose 2 billion every day. If you do the math, if you were to cursorily look at that figure, 2 billion per day gives you about 710 billion in a year. That gives you almost the deficit that we are talking about. So there are options, and the options is not just going and saying, let's raid this ministry and cut their expenditure, but it has to be a mix. Look at the tax expenditures, already some improvements there. That is the amount of money we give in terms of rebates. Why not go and reduce that so that we give rebates to Kenyans in terms of and the rest is what we've talked about, the fuel. Must we charge everything? Because we are saying we are not in normal times. Yet there is something we can do. The last question, which was about KQ, I think a lot of these state-owned enterprises need to run on a business model. You don't make a profit, you don't run, you shut down. We don't go to save every other company out there. We should actually be saving, because right now, as we hear of capital flight, we should actually be working to save that. So we cannot continue to save companies that are not performing, yet performing, doing business. Kenya Airways, anybody who flies with Kenya Airways, despite the delays here and there, is fairly full. At least I have fallen. It's always fairly full. So I don't understand where the loss comes from, and it's the most expensive, just to also say, so those are my thoughts, and happy to continue with this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abraham. We will now, I think we go to the PS, don't you think so? PS Hinga, and then we come to the CSS. But even as you do so, the few houses that Kenyans have put up for themselves get demolished. That's the house. That's your department. And some of them are really very, very expensive houses. And yet we heard from Hassan Omar's Kenya Kwanza government that the demolition be a thing of the past. So what happened in Mavoko is heart-rending. Does it prick your conscience? Does it really? Now, just for me, I should have put this to you, because you're such a marketer, and I know you. So today we are not going to get you to sweat, but please think about some of those things.
Now you want me to start sweating, and I think I had done pretty well. If I was to answer the questions in a methodical way from the co-chair, the majority leader, he spoke about other than the hinges, these other items, what is the policy intervention? One, what we have done is we have identified the 69. Number two, we have standardized them. It's very, very important. Why standardization? You know, in Kenya, we don't have a standard door. We don't. Because a door in Kenya is basically the space that you leave after you finish building your house. Meaning that you must get a fundi to come and customize your door. And if we continue on that line, we will never be able to benefit from the large economies of scale. So it is important that, first of all, we standardize, and we have done the standard. We have come up with what is called a Juakali manual, which is available. We have given it to them, and with the standards for those 69 items. The next thing is to take this thing to Parliament so that it becomes now entrenched. We are discussing with our committee whether it is going to be as a bill or as a policy. I understand that there is somebody who had brought in a bill in Parliament. We'll see whether we can be able to ride on it. Your Excellency, the Honorable Vice Chair, I think when we talk about the housing levy being an investment in ourselves, we are actually not. We're not using it incorrectly. We are investing in ourselves. And how do we invest in ourselves?
But is it a tax? You need to come out clearly.
It is a tax.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So why do you call it a levy in your presentation?
A levy is a tax.
A levy and a tax, there's no difference.
Actually, just go take the definition of a levy from what do you call it? Wikipedia. It is a tax.
And the CS calls it an investment. It's a bit confusing.
The effect is an investment. We're investing in ourselves, okay? Because we are taking that money and putting it in productive sectors that are going to be very important in the creation of jobs.
But Mr. Hinga, let's be clear. You say a levy is a tax.
Yes.
Now, my own understanding, we've heard it from here, from various presenters.
Right, and the live pictures right there are the ongoing round table, the national dialogue round table, where the officials right there are meeting with government officials from the Ministry of Energy and that of Treasury, as well as the State Department for Housing, just trying to get answers on questions that even Kenyans are asking, especially in regard to the high cost of living and also the housing agenda in the country. We have a reporter right there, Emmanuel Toh, and he will be giving us a comprehensive report on what comes out of that round table. For now, we take a short break right here at Africa Speaks. Don't go too far. We'll be back with more. Stay with us.